Hello everyone, my name's Jeff, or Godin on Discord, coming at you with the GreatLakes-TCG YouTube channel, one more time with another video on Purple Luffy, kind of discussing my thoughts of Purple Luffy moving into the 8.5 meta, and kind of giving you a little bit of a sample deck list, as well as, the different techs that I've been testing, and, the sauce. Essentially speaking, Purple Luffy is in a weird spot. In 8.5 specifically. The reason is, while we get significant amount of new cards to play with and buffs, especially with this Luffy Taro combo right here from the new starter deck, I feel like because of the addition of Blue Luffy as like the new de facto best leader, and the deck we're probably going to see the most in competitive events, it's become hard for our deck to say that we're one of the second best deck in the meta, as I truly believe it was back in 08. I actually think Purple Luffy probably falls down to like the fourth best deck in the meta. And the reason being is, if I have Blue Luffy as number 1, I would say BY Luffy's number 2, then followed up by Lucci as number 3, then finally Purple Luffy. And once again, the reason for that is because our matchup into Blue Luffy is really not that strong. It's like a 45-55, maybe a 40-60, depending on who goes first and kind of their draws. But essentially speaking, Blue Luffy is a much more consistent deck, where we really need to see our combo into them to really kind of take advantage of the board and fight back appropriately. And it kind of sucks to say that, And because like a lot of our deck is going to be tailored towards fighting against Luffy, I feel like we lose a lot of our success or against the black decks. And not that we don't do well into black. I feel like whereas before I would be doing like 65-35 into black, now I feel like it's more 55-45 or 60-40 depending on the deck. And so I feel like we lost a little bit of our edge, and that's kind of why I feel like overall Purple Luffy's fallen in the meta. That said, I still think that we have a fighting chance. I still think there's, techs and changes we can make to this deck, and play styles we can, play style changes we can make to kind of make this work. Just want to preface this by saying the deck I have in front of you is just more of a sample deck list. This is not the deck that I'm actually currently settled on. This is just one of the ones, like one of the versions I was testing. I'm going to talk more about the text that, the different cards that I'm testing at different ratios in a different section of this video. But I just wanted to, have a sample deck list out just so you guys can look at what I'm trying to discuss when I talk about the two different versions of this deck. One thing a lot of people don't know is there's actually been a second version of this deck that's actually more similar to what we've been playing in 08. That's actually been sort of successful in this meta, and really it's mostly the addition of these two cards. But the real reason why this deck is so successful in this meta is, while this version of the deck might not have as strong of a Luffy matchup as the Luffy Taro version, this version actually, I feel, has a better black matchup, and that's mostly related to the Magellan. Magellan's still very strong into the meta. Ramping to 10 and then double dropping 5 drops, or just ramping to 10 and just chaining Big Moms into Kaidos, is still fairly strong. And one of the buffs of the Purple Good Stuff build, or what I've coined as the perfect curve Luffy build, because you really have to see a perfect curve to really see that this deck do well, is that you're now playing Onami, which is another queen essentially, and so now you're drawing a lot more cards. You're able to filter a lot more than you were before, and so it's added just a little bit more consistency and a little bit more draw power to the deck that I feel like it really lacked. Unfortunately, I still don't I haven't tested this deck enough to kind of recommend it just yet, but something that if you're doing your own testing, I would encourage you to try something like this. Play with the ratios, and please let me know your results so I can know, hey, is this actually the better version in this meta? Now, just want to quickly go over deck tech. So these cards in particular are the cards I've been testing at various ratios in the decks, mostly in the Luffy Taro version, because I really haven't tested the other version more. Starting off with Bon Clay, I really want to just say he's kind of been a little lackluster for me. It's kind of hard to say. Like, I understand why we play him. Like, he's good into Blue Dofi, kind of, because, you know, you're taking one less life to ramp, but you're still able to hit your 7 on turn to play the Luffy Taro curve. Sure. But he's just so lackluster to play on 1. The benefit, though, is if they, you know, if Blue Dofi does bounce him with Law, rather than, like, bouncing like a Zorojiro or like a Blocker Law, at least you're getting some value out of him with that ramp. But at the same time, it's not like it's super significant enough to, you know, warrant playing him. I do have some versions of, you know, of the deck where I took him out. I don't think I've missed him. But if I don't see my Zorojiro, I do feel like he is one of the better, you know, plays going first. Magellan. So as you could see, a lot of people have so this is like a sample deck list I got from online. A lot of people have decided to take Magellan out of their deck. I don't think that's the right play. I think Magellan, like I said in this other version, this version 2 of Purple Luffy, the more 08 version, I think Magellan is actually the key component in our way to fight back against black. And the reason is because black decks kind of rely on Moria. Like it's kind of annoying to say, but they really do rely on that card. And as long as we keep them off of that and we are putting down a card that they really can't remove or answer, it's just so strong in giving you tempo in that matchup. And delaying those Morias really wins you the game because you're able to establish a much wider board at a much quicker pace than they can remove it more consistently. And so I've actually been putting Magellan back into my Luffy Taro version. I know a lot of people have, you know, taken it out based off this sampled build, but I've actually been putting Magellan's back in, and I felt that my matchup against black has gone up because of it rather than down. One other thing to kind of talk about and discuss is kind of the Luffy Taro version's weakness in my testing. It's consistency. It's still not there. Because sometimes I'll be seeing Luffy Taro, but the best thing I could do is play out like an Onami with it. And Onami won't even get its, like, you know, her effect because it's a -1 and I'm not at 8 Dawn, so it's just really just putting out a blocker, and it's just not nearly as strong or impactful as playing out like a Sangoro. So I've tested Jinbeis and I've tested Bonkichis. Right now I'm not on either of them, but I really did enjoy the consistency they provided. Specifically Bonkichi. While he's not good on curve on 7, he's great the turn after 7. So while you're on 8 or 9 Dawn, if you're able to play him, he really can swing the match, because you're doing so much to clear a Blue Dofi's board by doing like basically -2k at 2 different characters, and then you swing into them. You're either asking for their whole hand that turn, which you typically will get, or you just clear their whole board. It's such a good card, but it doesn't have counter, and so I did feel like it was a little bricky at times, especially into, say, BY Luffy or other black decks. The reason why Captain Kid's up here is actually kind of fun. It's actually not a reason to play him, but actually I've felt he's been one of the most cuttable cards in this deck. While, like, at least the Luffy Taro version specifically. The reason being is the Luffy Taro version kind of sits around, you get the 7 Dawn, then you Dawn minus the 6, then once you're at 6, you go to 8, then when you're at 8, you go to, you probably Dawn minus again, you go back down to 7, then you go back up to 9. You don't really find the time to play him unless you're like going second and he's in your starting hand, then you can play him, right? But in this version of the deck where it's more 08 focused, this version, you do want to keep him in here because you're double 5 dropping on 10, and so he's really strong there. Or even if you only have 9 Dawn and you already have a kit established on board, you could put like a Magellan, Dawn minus, ramp a Dawn, then play a Queen after you, so you could still double 5 drop and cheat that other card out. Whereas in this version, you're not really getting the advantage of that 5 cost, and that's why I could see why they've already have him at 3 in this version of the deck. So definitely consider cutting Captain Kid in your ratios, and I've actually done so. I'll just say right now, I don't even play Captain Kid at the 5 cost in my Luffy Taro builds anymore. To kind of go hand in hand with these two, while I'm already here, is talking about the 1 cost event. Once again, it's all about that consistency of finding the cards. It's nice that, you know, Captain Kidd is searchable with this one cost event, so that was nice to have that synergy. I felt like the one cost event was nice if I saw it in my starting hand, but like anytime afterwards, it was a little bricky. And it's funny that I'd say this, but it's because while I can play him on my, you know, turn 1 play with only like going first, I only have 1 Dawn, sure. But then I want to play a 4 cost out, and then I want to play a 7 cost out. And so if I were to draw into this event on my 4 Dawn turn or my 7 Dawn turn, I'm actually not playing it until my 8 Dawn turn, and even then, I'm only playing 1. So I did feel like, you know, sometimes while the deck, like, while this is nice to give me that extra consistency, when I don't see my perfect curve, if it was in my starting hand, I actually did not love drawing it. Like, say turn 2, I draw into it, I'm like, well, crap, like what am I gonna do? So I've actually started cutting out the searcher event, but it may have a place in certain builds. Moving forward to talk about the 10 cost Luffy, I've seen a lot of people put this back in their deck. Even I think Jonas was playing it against Eggman earlier today. I was watching them on stream, and he had this card in his version of Purple Luffy in 8.5. I personally don't play it, but I've tested it out significantly. I don't think it's bad. Let me just say, I do not think it's bad. I think everyone should test it. I think it could replace, say, a Kaido. So instead of playing like 2 Kaido or 3 Kaido, you could take one out and play this instead. And I do think it has, you know, merit against, say, BY Luffy, it's really good. Against Bonnie, it could be really good. But specifically for the way I play my Purple Luffy, I just felt that I wasn't appreciating the 10 cost play as much, especially in the Luffy Taro builds where, once again, I'm not getting to 10 as quickly, but I could definitely see it, you know, replacing one of the Kaidos in this version of the deck. Going back to the deck text, next is Kamazo. I love this card. The reason why this card is so good is, 1, it's searchable with the 1 cost event if you were to play it, but 2, Marshall D. Teach is the 2 cost, the new one, is such a strong card in Blue Dofi. And Blue Dofi actually gets so much advantage from playing those 1 drops, like even the buggy, the 2K buggy, on his first turn, and then being able to bounce them back to hand with, say, like Jozu or like that 4 cost law that bounces. And so they're like, you know, basically recurring hand size, and they're tempoing out some of your cards. And it's actually kind of strong. What Kamazo does is actually destroys Teach, for 1, but 2, makes it so those blocker, you know, not the bounce law, might have to focus on, say, like another 4 cost body. And so the Dofi is actually wasting Dawn to play that law, because he's not going to be able to get that, like, you know, that advantage, that hand advantage back as, you know, as easily as he was before. So I found that this card's actually low-key a small tech against Teach and Blue Dofi in general, while also being a searchable 2K at times. The next 2 cards I want to talk about, and I'll probably kind of wrap the video up there, is this King and the 7 Kid. The reason why I have these here is I've tested these both at different ratios, and I gotta say, I think 7 cost Kid is absolute bait. I think the card is terrible, especially in the Luffy Taro builds. I understand why people were playing it. They think it's good against Blue Dofi. You're buffing up your leader. If you don't have a Luffy Taro play, you could play this on 7, and then the next turn, you could, you know, maybe play a Kaido or a Linlin. I understand. But this card that has like 0 board pressure. You're not pressuring the board at all the turn you're playing it. And even when you're swinging with it, I feel like Blue Dofi typically has 6 or 7 cards in hand by now, and so swinging with this cost kid doesn't really clear board as efficiently as, say, playing like a Luffy Taro Sangoro into, say, the 7 cost King, which now you go from attacking once with a 7 cost kid to attacking with Luffy Taro, Sangoro, King 3 times, demanding a lot more counter from their hand if they want to save their board. And I've actually found that King is a great follow-up to the Luffy Taro Sangoro play, because he's also actually much better into, say, black decks, or even against Purple Luffy because of his power, comparative to like Captain Kidd. And so I found that King is like a perfect follow-up play because he also can't get White Tiger. I mean, neither can this kid, but that's the reason why I played this King over, say, this King. But I've seen some people play this King and say that they've seen some success with it, which is why he's kind of on this part of the video. Same thing with Decklist Bullet. Some people have said they've had some success with Bullet. Personally, I haven't tested them, that extensively. Last thing to talk about is Lilin. I feel like some people have taken her out of the deck, but I feel like she is really, really strong, especially in Purple Luffy decks. Specifically because whenever you play Lilin, especially against Blue Dofi, you're delaying lethal by 2 attacks because you're taking away one of their attacks and you're gaining a life. You're taking away one of their attacks, you're gaining a life. And so once you start chaining these, that's kind of how you start creeping back into the game and winning the game. I think that where Purple Luffy used to be an aggro deck, now we're more focused towards like a late game, end game deck, or turboing to 10 and then just building a large board and swinging for game there. That said, kind of call it wraps here. Just wanted to do a small discussion, my thoughts on the deck. I will follow up this video hopefully within a week with, say, my version of the deck once I've done more internal testing and can give you guys a deck I'm actually proud to present. But I just want to give out my thoughts while the starter decks are coming out this week. I think even tomorrow a lot of people have picked them up. So please, if you find out something that I'm not testing, or if you have any secret tech that you want to discuss, reach out to me. Also leave comments so me and my team can get that feedback and give you guys better content. All in all, have a good one. Thank you for listening and watching.